I'm here today with Susan P. Hunter. Susan is an author of a recent book entitled 77 Letters, Operation Morale Booster, Vietnam. Let me just read a little bit of the description of the book. In 1966, during the Vietnam War, Joan Hunter, an ordinary housewife, mother of four from the small, idyllic coastal town of Scituate, Massachusetts, spearheads Operation Morale Booster, a mission to ensure that every deployed American GI receives mail at weekly mail call. All armed only with her typewriter and her vibrant personality, she reaches thousands of soldiers and especially captivates one battle-tested soul, Bob Johnson. She is white, he is black. She is married, he is not. This potentially scandalous relationship transcends society's rules of engagement due to their honest and thought-provoking candor. So, Susan, it's an intriguing book, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to share this with everyone. Yeah, so 77 letters, Operation Morale Booster, Vietnam. So Operation Morale Booster was the writing campaign that my mom started back during the Vietnam War. And it was her gesture of support for the soldiers, not necessarily a yay or nay for the war, but she just wanted to support these soldiers, many of whom, had just graduated high school and they were being deployed to the jungles of Vietnam. Leaving everything they had ever known. So she just wanted to be that companion for them, let them know that the people in the States are thinking about them and support them. And growing up, I had heard about this campaign that my mom had started many times, as we were growing up, myself and my three siblings. But we were never compelled to read the letters. And she would just say, oh, they're somewhere in the house in a couple of manila envelopes. And someday we'll read through them. And it was about 17 years ago now that I was up in Massachusetts visiting my mom. My dad had just passed, and I was up organizing her attic so that she wouldn't have to go up into the attic anymore. And I came across the letters or the envelopes, and I immediately had all the flashbacks to all the time she said, oh yeah, they're somewhere in the house. So I, ran downstairs, showed them to my mom. One envelope, unfortunately, was completely destroyed from water, years of water probably leaking in the attic. And the other one right next to it was in pristine condition. So she was excited and said, you keep them in safekeeping. I had a fireproof safe, and, someday we'll read through them. Okay, that's what we did. So now fast forward another 15 years, I'm down here in Nashville, and my mom is suffering from dementia. And I took her home to live with me so that I could kind of care for her. And I was a little naive at the time. I thought I could rally her, brain and her memory and reverse the signs of dementia. So I got the letters out to read with her, thinking, let's engage her long-term memory. And as I started reading through the letters, they were, each was as riveting as the last. And I said, Mom, these are incredible. This campaign that you did for the soldiers is amazing. And, she would just be like, oh, it's so silly. No, I just kept them company. She didn't realize the gravity of it, but yet each letter was amazing. Now, she wrote to about 40 different soldiers, but she was responsible for thousands of letters and packages going over to the soldiers because she got schools involved, Cub Scouts, the church, and it was just like a really great cooperative effort. But the soldiers that I have letters from, she also had the wherewithal to attach her carbon copy response to the letter. So, for instance, here, this is how it would be. Here's the envelope it came in. This is one of the soldiers' letters, they wrote, and then this would be her carbon copy response.
Wow.
So, yeah, in many cases, I have a dialogue, not just letters coming in. And so after reading them, and one soldier in particular, we had 77 letters from, and his name is Bob Johnson, and he was the one soldier that we heard about also as we were growing up because he came to visit us. So during the war, 2 years into their epistolary relationship, he came to Scituate, Massachusetts and spent a weekend with us. And so we had heard about him, and he was kind of our family soldier. We didn't have a soldier in our family, so we adopted him as ours. And so this, between my mom and Bob, I had 77 letters. And after reading them, and I'll go into it, the journey he took us through, 7 years of the Vietnam War. He had 4 tours over there.
Wow.
And he started off as a 24-year-old, and then you're in his thoughts in his head for 7 years as the ebbs and flows of his view toward the war and the justification of being there. And also you're in the front lines, like he was in the Air Mobile Division. And so you're on the front lines hearing what's really going on, what's going through the soldiers' heads, what's going through the villagers' heads, because he was very good to the villagers and the pacification of the area. And you're hearing it in real time through these letters, which is super, super unique, super cool. It's actually been compared to the Diary of Anne Frank,
Wow.
finding that gem.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's really good. So I said to my mom, I said, Mom, we need to see if Bob Johnson's still alive. And so we found out, a little perusing the internet, and I wrote to him with a fairly generic, carefully crafted letter, because I didn't know if he was suffering from PTSD or anything. I didn't want to open Pandora's box on him. So I just wanted to know, this is my mom. Is this you, Bob? And sure enough, he then sent the letter to his daughter, who then responded to me saying, yes, this is my dad. And he did write to your mom, and I know all about you. And his daughter actually is another whole story within this big story. She was adopted over in Korea during the war. And it wasn't just a normal adoption. It was just a jaw-dropping story. And so anyway, so now I'm in close contact with her. We talk certainly every week and perhaps text, every day. And it's just been a blessing getting close to her and her getting close to me. She knew about me because I was born during the war. So Bob talks about Princess Susan being born. And so he would always refer to me as Princess Susan, even years after the war. So that's how she remembered me. And I'm like, let me tell you, I am not a princess. But anyway, so what I did is I took all their letters and I put them in 2 binders. And these are the binders. And I mailed them to Bob to read, so he could read the letters as well, because they're just beautiful. And they're just so timely too. And he then sent them to his daughter to read, Melody. And this is when this story became epic. She texted me 3 letters into it. She texted me saying, Susan, I can't do this. And I said, no, please keep reading. You're going to love what you have to read. Your dad is an amazing man. And then I didn't hear from her for 4 hours. And then she texted me again. And she was just like, this is the most amazing treasure. And then I don't want to spoil the whole story, but that's when I said, you know what, this needs to be shared with the masses. This is too good, too much of a healing story. We can't keep this to ourselves. And that's when I started seeking a co-author to author this with me, because I have not authored a book prior to this. And I was kind of in that route, scouting out an author to do this with me. And that's when COVID hit. And now COVID stopped the globe and also made it very difficult for me to continue looking for a co-author. So one of my friends said, why don't you take a stab at it? Write it yourself. You're a good writer. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to. This needs to get out. This message needs to get out. My Vietnam veterans, or our Vietnam veterans, are needing this. This is so long overdue, and we need to right some wrongs. And so I started writing it. And then I ended up getting this scholarship for some mentorship, and with David Paul Kirkpatrick. And he was president of Paramount Pictures for many years, and he's just this brilliant, brilliant mind. And so he mentored me as to the point of view and, the storyline and how to, make it a quick or a fast-paced read and engaging. And so I took his advice and I wrote this book. And of course, as spring melded into summer and we had all this more civil unrest, then it became even more urgent that I needed to get this out. I couldn't wait for the traditional publishing route. And so I did. I wrote all through COVID, and I published this October 4th. And it's been so well received. So I am doing grassroots marketing, reaching out. I'm taking advantage of the silver linings of COVID with, the acceptance of Zooming. And I've been going into different civic organization meetings like the Exchange Club and the Rotary Club, and, speaking to them and just spreading the word and asking everybody to, read the book. And if you love it, please share it. And also I've asked people, when you do read the book, and pass it on to either a library or a veteran, because I would love for every veteran to read this. The ones that have read it have emailed me saying how cathartic it was for them and how much they appreciate it. And I'm just, just trying to spread good vibes in 2021 to make up for 2020.
That is such an amazing story, and I'm really glad that you pursued, this trail to make it happen. That's a lot of work that you put into it over quite a long period of time. But it sounds as though it's got to be such an amazing blessing for.
It is.
So for some.
And I do believe this was dropped in my lap. I do believe God dropped this in my lap. And even during the writing of it, I have, what Squire Rushnell coins the word God winks. Well, I've had so many God winks during the writing of this book. And I'll share one with you.
Sure, please.
Mine. So one of the letters that Bob sent my mother back in 66 was of an operation he had been on, because he never liked to complain. He would let the journalist complain for him. And so he would keep his letters positive and light, and then he would send an article of an operation he had been on. And this article quotes the platoon sergeant and as Billy R. Dansby from Hendersonville, Tennessee. Well, I had just moved to Gallatin, Tennessee, which is a mile down the road from Hendersonville, Tennessee. And so it caught my eye, and I said, I got to see if he's still, with us. And again, I searched the internet, and I found a William Ray Dansby about the age that I would expect him to be. And so I wrote him a letter and enclosed a copy of the article. And I said, my mom, I'm working on this cool tribute to the Vietnam veterans, writing a book about my mom's Operation Morale Booster. So I kind of gave him a little bit of background. I said, this article was enclosed in one of the letters, and I'm wondering if this is you. And, just as a military professional would do, on his way back from the mailbox, he calls me and leaves a message like a drill sergeant. Susan, this is Billy Ray Dansby of the 2nd 7th, and if this is the Bob Johnson I think you're referring to, I know him very well, and I look forward to speaking to you. Boom. And I was like, whoa.
That's classic.
It was great. I kept the message just because it is classic, exactly. So sure enough, I called him back, and I've since become fast friends with him. He lives down in Elkton, Tennessee, and I've spent many, many hours with him. And he said out of all the people that he was close to in Vietnam, Bob was the closest. And so he has all these stories of Bob, and he was amazed. When I showed him the letters, he was amazed that Bob had the time or took the time to write all these letters, because he said he was a dutiful soldier. And he was a, squad leader, and he was just so good that he couldn't even believe that he had the time to write all these letters. And then when I showed him the letters themselves, he was amazed at, just the insight and his writing capabilities. So it was beautiful all around. So now here's the God wink. So he says to me, did he tell you about Missouri? And I said, no, Missouri, no. The only thing I know about Missouri, one of his letters, he tells my mother how when he's on stateside leave, he was going to Missouri to see parents of one of his soldiers who had perished. That's all I knew. And he's like, that makes sense. And I said, why? Tell me more. And he said, well, Missouri was his turning point, and he basically took a young kid under his wing, and he nicknamed him Missouri because he was from the state of Missouri. And again, I don't want to spoil it for you because it is in the book, but he saw the ending of Missouri's life, and it just really affected him in such a way that he's never forgiven himself. As many of these veterans come home, they come home with survivor's guilt. And this really affected Bob. And so I didn't know anything about it. He never divulged that in any of his letters to my mom. So I even asked his daughter, I said, hey, did your dad ever tell you about Missouri? And she didn't really know anything about him either, other than he was a kid that he nicknamed. And so I kind of clued her into it, and it made sense to her. Like, it was all starting to make sense. And so then I did a little reading up on survivor's guilt, and then I wrote to Bob just because I felt like I needed to do that, on kind of what I learned and trying to help him using his own words that he's used in the letters to my mom. I was just reminding him of his own words in hopes of healing him from this survivor's guilt so that he could just let go of it. I really just want I really want these veterans. I know I can't do this, but this is my goal so that they relieve themselves of all, the guilt or the pain. And I don't know, I just want them to heal. They definitely have my heartstrings.
Wow, what an amazing book. What an amazing set of stories that,
Yeah, it's really cool. And then another one, this is, and you'll read this in the book, and I'll tell you, I'll share this with you now, but another one that's even more profound is back in the 1600s, Scituate, Massachusetts, was the home of Chief Justice William Cushing. And he was the Chief Justice of the Massachusetts State Supreme Court. And then he later went on to become the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. But while he was Chief Justice of the Massachusetts State Supreme Court, he had to rule on a case where a slave had reached his time at 25, and that was the agreement. At 25, he was set free. And this is back in the 1600s. He was set free. And so, but then, his owner didn't want that to happen. So he was trying to get him back. And this gentleman, Quock Walker, he came to Massachusetts, and it became a trial. And anyway, so to fast forward, Chief Justice William Cushing decided that, in Massachusetts, slavery is repugnant and we'll have no place for it. And this gentleman is a free man, and every child he has is a free, and basically just said, this is not happening in Massachusetts. And also he then went on further to say, I want Scituate, Massachusetts to be a role model town for harmony, for racial harmony. And that was his charge going forward. And so now, 2 Thanksgivings ago, when I was up in Scituate visiting my mom for Thanksgiving, staying in the inn at Scituate Harbor, I was in the lobby reading books, and I started reading about the legends of Scituate. And I came across this little excerpt about William Cushing, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I would not have known this, but for the fact that I'm here at this hotel, and I wake up before my kids, so I'm out in the lobby reading this book. And to think that was his goal back in the 1600s, to have Scituate be a role model for racial harmony. And then, 400 years later, this book comes out about racial harmony stemming from this little town in, Massachusetts. So I thought, wow,
so cool.
just God works in the most amazing ways.
I guess. Oh my goodness. Wow. So, this book is available on Amazon. You self-published it, and
I did.
Congratulations on taking the bull by the horns and doing it yourself and getting it out there.
Thank you. It was challenging. So now I had heard from some people that, writing the book is the easy part. And I kept thinking, no, it can't be the case. It can't be. And they were right. They were right. However, it's a learning curve. But if you just, take your time and do it. And what I did, and I would definitely suggest everyone who wants to self-publish take a bunch of books that have been traditionally published and study them and try to emulate them so that your book, when it comes out, it doesn't look like a typical self-published book. And, and make sure you, incorporate the copyright page, and you have it set up with, just take a bunch of traditional books and try to emulate them. And it takes time. And of course, the different platforms require different formats, and it's frustrating, but it's worth the time. It's definitely worth the time. And you know what? And then it's on your time. Your book moves as fast as you want it to move. You don't have to wait on anybody else and their agenda and where your book fits into their agenda. And of course, I had a sense of urgency between my veterans aging, and then of course the civil unrest in this country. My heart aches for this country. I love this country so much, and it's been aching, and I just felt I had to do this.
Wow. Well, I mean, you clearly have the perseverance, to do all of this, which, with all the authors that I work with, that's like the number one characteristic that I find as what really matters, that your heart's into it, and you just are driven to make it happen. And so congratulations on doing that, taking the bull by the horns and, making it happen.
Thank you. Definitely motivated for our country and our veterans. And Yeah, I was excited to start. And you know what, some days I would go up to my office and think, okay, how am I going to, bridge this? Because I couldn't include all the letters. There's so many letters. So I had to take some out, which, kind of leads for a sequel. Or actually, I already have interest from Hollywood to make this into a TV series
Awesome.
because there's just so much here. So, but, I would start off each day. I start off each day with a prayer, show me the words, you use me. And that happened. There were times this is my first book, so I had never experienced this before, but wow, when you get into the flow, it's a beautiful thing. I can't explain it other than I would be writing, or typing, and I really wouldn't necessarily know what I was going to be typing. And yet I started typing and it all worked. It worked beautifully. Even far better if I had just mapped it out and tried to, manipulate it together. This was it was all authentic. It was all organic, and it just happened. And it was just, and that's another reason why I know these are God's messages. He wants out. He wants us to heal. He wants, peace for our veterans and for our country. So yeah, I'm motivated. Knowing that he's working through me is pretty motivating.
Awesome. For sure. For sure. Well, again, the book is entitled 77 Letters, Operation Morale Booster, Vietnam. There's the cover, and you can find it on Amazon. It's an excellent book. And Susan, thank you so much for doing all this work and for telling us all about it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.